This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest, the podcast which brings you reviews of the films which didn't make it to the cinema and instead went straight to DVD, Blu-ray and streaming media. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me via Skype are Richard Hawes.
Hello everybody.
Tom Jolliffe.
Hello.
And Will Bentley.
Hello.
And in this week's episode, we will be covering the Spanish sci-fi-ish horror thriller, The Platform, the very sci-fi-ish Code 8. Our short shot this week is Interface, and we'll be looking at Breeders, also known as Deadly Instinct, in our DTV throwback. So let's crack on. Our first review this week is The Platform. A man called Goreng wakes to find himself in a special prison. Each cell is stacked on top of the other with a central hole, through which a table laden with food slowly lowers each day. Those at the top level have their fill of food each day, while those lower down get scraps, if they are lucky. Goreng learns some details and hard truths from his cellmate, and starting on the 43rd floor, each month their position will change. How will they fare if they sink to the bottom? So this is on Netflix, guys. It's it was much touted, much talked about online and things. How did we find it? I'm going to kick this over to Rich to begin with.
Well, as someone who hasn't seen it, I'm probably not the best person to actually begin this review. So I'm going to throw it over.
Brilliant.
5, 1. Okay, so I'm going to throw this over to Tom to begin with.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Well, not so much enjoyed. It was quite extreme at times, but it's a really, really well-made film, I thought. Really good cast, really good sort of simple concept. And the way they've paced it is really good as well. So it sort of reminded me a little bit of The Cube. So you're sort of in this one setting through most of the film. But yeah, the whole sort of issue of class is, it's a little bit on the nose, the way they've done it, but I suppose that's intentional. The really good old school gore effects. And there's a lot of nice touches where, something's called upon that comes back a bit later. And, it all builds up to quite a nice finale, I thought.
So Chekhov's got quite a few guns
away.
In this one.
Yeah.
Will, how about you? I mean, this sort of touch any sort of raw nerves with you?
I mean, yeah, in a way it did. I mean, it's. I think Tom's point. I was going to say exactly the same thing. It made me think of The Cube straight away. I mean, it's a very pure, very simple, stripped down concept. I'd go along with that, and I think it's trying to say the same. It's trying to say similar things to what the original Cube film was trying to say. Because I mean, it was all about kind of deeply embedded divisions between the different people, and the fact that they'd only stand a chance of, like in the Cube, they'd only stand a chance of kind of surviving it if they sort of broke down barriers rather than putting them up. And it was quite a sort of not totally similar thing in the Platform, but it was very much like, you all move around in your position in the Platform every month, and you can kind of see what the behaviour of people higher up the food chain, so to speak, would do to people lower down it. And, it was about whether or not you would change in order to sort of make the situation better for everyone, or if the situation would change you. I mean, that's the most in-your-face kind of point I think that was made in the film. And I was really impressed with was how, when you see everything through Goreng's eyes and like all the things that happened to him, and you sort of start wondering to yourself whether you would even see the things coming that the things that sort of started changing him. And it was I think it was brutally honest sort of look at society, and it kind of quite horrifying macrocosm. And what Tom said about the gore effects, they were fantastic. And if anything, I would say they were brilliant because they were underdone. It's not a splatterfest. I mean, it was actually quite tightly edited, and it wasn't sort of, the gore wasn't explicit. It was all very implicit and just so brilliantly implied. It's very queasy to watch. It really is. I mean, you don't want to give too much away by saying what goes on in the lower levels. But I think it's sort of fairly obvious. But really the more uncomfortable stuff is just the psychology. There's some very, very good acting. There's some people being put in awful situations, and people kind of losing the plot basically. And the tension and paranoia is brilliant, and that's more unsettling really than the violence, because the violence and the gore. It's not a splatter film, really. And what is there just accentuates a really horribly kind of dark and twisted and unsettling, kind of atmosphere. I think it's brilliant. It really, enjoy is the wrong word. I think
admire maybe is probably the word to look you're looking for, isn't it? It's
very good.
Yeah, it's very interesting. With the thing that happened with Syria recently, and the refugees and things like that, there was an advert that I think was the BBC put out, where it showed you how this young girl goes from celebrating her 11th birthday with cakes and candles and things, and then basically her and her family having to run for their lives until she's in England and she's totally traumatized. And it's in this sort of current situation we're in at the moment, where everything's reasonably hunky-dory, I mean, how much is it going to take to just push things that bit further over the ledge? And you have this film which puts that into a microcosm, where you have people on different levels of society, as it were, and sort of the people at the top, they get to eat what the hell they want and gorge themselves. But the funny thing is, as well, is the suicides come from the top.
Yes, they jump because
they've been on the lower levels and they suddenly see how sumptuous it is at the top and they can't take it. It's really bizarre. But
the old guy says, if they've got nothing to wait for.
Yeah, exactly.
They can eat as much as they want, and they've got nothing to look forward to, sort of thing. And it's I mean, it's brilliant. It's like sort of distilled, sort of kind of quite harsh social. It's like Orwell sort of thing, isn't it?
And then you got we actually see inside the kitchens with the chefs and things, and the sort of very sort of dictatorial routine, regime that is, somebody getting punished for leaving a hair on one of the blancmanges or something ridiculous like that. Absolutely ridiculous. It's interesting to see, because every inmate is allowed to bring in one item from the outside world. And it's quite funny to see what some of them actually bring, because obviously our main guy brings a copy of Don Quixote. His roommate brings in a knife, which is probably a bit more practical. I think there's one bit when you sort of see some people from the lower levels, and one of them's got a canoe. He's brought his canoe with him, which is just really bizarre. But
the guy that didn't work out how he thought it would.
No, exactly. But it's a very grim film, but very well made. It has got a political statement to make.
It's a universal statement, I think. Really,
I think so. Yeah, exactly. And at one point we have that altruistic woman who, she's the one who signs everyone up, and she turns up. And she's trying to sort of get people to sort of be a bit more pragmatic with the food distribution and things like that, and it was telling them to fuck off. Basically, it's it's not, if she always thought it was a social experiment, and it's not turning out the way she thought it was meant to, which was the hard.
Was it vertical management or something? Yeah. Vertical self-management. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, it's a very striking film. It's probably not one you want to watch if you're feeling a bit depressed, or if you are, make sure you've got something nice and light and fluffy to watch.
Because this won't do anything.
This is
really.
This is as bleak as The Road or something like that at times. It's grim, but really well made and definitely worth seeing. That's for sure. Okay, guys, what we're going to score The Platform. Will, what are you going to score it?
I was going to say if I can go first. I mean, I think it was, it was a striking film, a brilliant idea. I think the idea and the sort of uncompromisingness of it, I think, deserves at least an 8, quite frankly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to go for an 8 on this. Tom?
Yeah, same here. I'd go for an 8. I think probably my favourite film of the year so far.
It's interesting with Netflix. When they sort of started buying films and putting their own logo on them, that they hit a few sort of wrong notes, I think, to begin with, like Cloverfield, Paradox, and then a couple of others. Bright, some people didn't like as well. But if they're going to sort of make acquisitions like this, then I think they're going to start being on a winner for sure. Our next review is Code 8. It's set in an alternative reality where people exist with special powers. At one time, they were an important part of society until their powers could be replicated by machines and replaced. Now they are looked upon as being dangerous second-class citizens with many prejudices held against them. When his ailing mother starts to get very sick, Connor Reed throws in his lot with a guy named Garrett, who is conducting a number of lucrative heists. So, Rich, we covered the short version of this a couple of years ago.
We did indeed.
Which we thought was really good at the time. And it's really good to see, we've always sort of talked about sort of short films being used as sort of concept and sort of stages for, going on to bigger and better things. So it's really good to actually sort of see something like this, come to fruition and be handled so well.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is that it's been a long time since I saw the short, which was made in 2016, and we covered it, I think, like 1 or 2 years ago. It didn't feel like the movie that I expected from the short, but that doesn't say that I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's very much it touches on themes that we've seen explored in various films like X-Men, Bright, which you mentioned a minute ago, Alien Nation, and Push with Chris Evans. Yeah. So this kind of superhero-y, mutant-y kind of thing, which I can't, to a certain extent, I felt the over-familiarity of the elements did let it down a little bit, but I thought it was very well done. The film looks great. I think it's it's a crowdfunded, at least partially, project as far as I'm aware, and it's doing really well. It's as we're recording this, it's the #1 DTV film. It's also performing very well on Netflix at the same time. It stars let me get this right. Robbie and Amell. Yeah. Robbie Amell, and they're not brothers. They're cousins apparently, because I did check.
I never realised.
So Steven Amell is well known as Arrow, from the Arrowverse, and his cousin Robbie plays the main character. And they're not playing relatives in the movie, which you get a bit worried about, but they don't actually look that much alike, which is quite handy. So you don't get them too confused. Steven Amell's got a beard and stuff, which helps. But so they're both like Robbie's the young guy, angry young man, gets in over his head kind of story, because he's trying to get some money. The whole prejudice thing is very quite heavy-handedly handled, which I think is interesting for a movie with a largely white cast. But partly we got Sung Kang in there as well, as a detective. But it's the whole, they're going to work on, building sites, and they using their powers when they're not supposed to be, and all that sort of stuff, and then they get called out.
Yeah, they're the sort of undocumented workers, basically.
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. Yeah.
So what bolsters this a lot is the police force who have these anthropomorphic android officers who get airdropped from the sky from these giant drones, which is really impressive FX work. It was featured in the short. It just looks really, really cool that these robots in police uniform and things.
I think from the short, it was that I was expecting more to be made of those.
Yeah.
As a feature, I mean, they're quite heavily featured on some of the posters, but they're actually not a big part of the story.
No, they're just always there in the background.
Yeah.
The heist bit I thought was done really, really well as well. And the sort of double crosses and everything that goes with it. I was not so much, the whole family drama side of it was okay, I guess, but the actress who plays his mum, she was in the series Covert Affairs, which me and my wife really liked as well. So that sort of helped perk things up a little bit, sort of seeing her doing something.
I thought she was really good. I was also thinking that Robbie Amell seemed too old to be her son, which having looked up their ages is not impossible. But also, I think he's actually playing a character younger than he is, because his character seems like he should be about 19.
Yeah, he's actually about
or 20. He's 30. So there was kind of a discrepancy there. But I think he was with the project from the short and stuff. Yeah. So I guess he was one of the guys who was all in from the start. And there's no point. You can't go and recast and stuff when you're that far along. There's a surprising development with his character towards the end, which I was quite interested in. Has anybody else seen this? Tom, have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah, it's I enjoyed it. You feel like you've seen it all before to an extent, but I think it's well acted. There's some nice set pieces. I think what I liked about the design in this is it's quite minimal. I think you get a lot of sci-fi films and they tend to be a bit over designed, and then occasionally the effects don't match up to the ambition. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they kept this fairly sort of simple, and they put everything into the sort of the drones and the those sort of mechanical soldiers. Yeah. So all the sort of set pieces are really well done, well acted. Yeah, I thought it was just really solid.
And even the little visual effects bits where they're working on the building site and stuff, I thought worked really well.
Yeah, just sort of simple and effective. Yeah.
The other thing, one of my favourite parts of it was actually the opening credits. That world building montage. With the whole thing of the newspaper cuttings and broadcast kind of mini documentary thing for setting up a story is very familiar. We've seen it a lot of times, but this was one of my favourites actually. I like this a lot. I mean, the attention to detail I thought was brilliant.
And I was glad they got rid of that. They got that over with at the beginning. So we got very little sort of plot exposition going forward from that point. It did a lot of show not tell, which I thought was pretty good. Definitely worth seeing. Okay, so this is currently it's one of those interesting ones. It's currently available on Netflix, but also on DVD. If you don't happen to have a subscription, you can always rent the film. But
and it's on video on demand as well.
Exactly. So this has actually hit quite a few platforms at once, which is quite interesting, and is doing very well. It's quite well received on Netflix in their top 10, and it's at the top of our charts as well. So good on it. You might even see a sequel go somewhere down the line. So who knows?
Can I just ask? Well, before we do that, can I just ask how you felt about the supporting cast of characters, like the healing girl and the sort of the sleazy drug dealer bad guy character and stuff?
Yeah, there were some really interesting ones, like the henchman who's the bodyguard guy.
Yeah.
You could sort of like absorb bullets and things. That was really cool. There was another girl in it as well, wasn't there? Who I can't remember what she did now. This sort of the Asian one. Was she Asian? Or was she black? I can't remember. But there's another sort of character who sort of like basically likes killing people. But she, yeah, and then the sleazy drug dealer guy who could read minds and things. So it's all, yeah, it was all.
I quite liked all that.
Yeah,
I liked them all really. I thought the characters were great and the performances matched them well. I think everything worked really in terms of the casting. I thought.
Yeah,
that was just my passing thought on that. As for scores, I would go for an 8, but because it's such a well-worn path, I'm going to drop it down to a 7.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. I think it's really well presented, but you know, we've kind of ridden this horse before a few times, but it is a very good example of that sort of, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, a solid 7 for sure. Tom?
Yeah, same here, solid 7. Let's make it blackjack.
21. Our short shot this week is Interface from director Ben Ramsay, he of Blood and Bone fame. So this one, it's a dystopian future, rogue cop, messiah figure. God.
Not to be confused with The Perfect Weapon with Steven Seagal or a million other films.
I did not get on with this. So this, you know, a caption comes up at the beginning saying this is actually just scenes that are being shot for a 2-part pilot that he's currently working on. So it's very disjointed. Some of it looks brilliant. Some of it looks really shoddy.
I agree.
And I'm not sure how joined up. To be honest, it's 30 minutes long. I got through about 20 minutes of it and I switched it off. Because I thought I've basically seen enough of this so far.
That's a shame, because the opening, you get that big impressive martial arts sequence at the beginning, which they then return to at the end.
Typically.
So there was more of that you could have enjoyed.
Yeah. So that, you know, some of that looks pretty good, but yeah. So we got this cop who brings in this messiah character called Lazarus, who. Well, let's step back a bit. So the MacGuffin in this is a interface into your sort of retinal socket, which replaces TV and movies and everything, and sort of presents you with a whole VR world. And there is a pretty cool bit where you get this good sort of advert for this new system, and then the woman sort of streaming off all these sort of side effects which could happen, you know, afterwards. You know, may induce brain disorder and all this sort of stuff, and you know, impotence and God knows. So this guy Lazarus has come up with a way of hacking into that system apparently, but yeah, I think that it was very misconceived. You know, this idea it replaces TV, it replaces movies. Well, in that case, how do you know about it? Why are they doing adverts for it? You know? But,
doesn't this all sound very much like Strange Days?
A little bit.
Yeah, and just basically everything Philip K. Dick's done.
Yeah, so it's weird that this is their passion project. You know, this is the one they're going to sort of, you know, die on the line for. But there are some nice scenes in the police station when he gets in a fight with Lazarus, and then it turns out he was never there in the first place. You know, little bits like that. But then you got other scenes with like sort of riots and things, and it's like. It looks like it was meant to be done. You know the film Sin City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it comes across a bit like that, sort of very sort of like a motion comic kind of thing. And it just looks wrong. It just looks, you know. I think we were talking earlier about a film which stayed within its limitations, with its effects and things, so it looked more realistic. This just like. Goes the other way, you know. Some of it looks really like Sega Mega Drive stuff, but anyway. Rich, you've seen this, so you know maybe you can be a bit more positive than I am with it.
No, I think it was a bit, because initially when I heard about it, I thought, it is a proper short film. So to then start watching it and realizing it's actually kind of, I don't know what the best term is, like a show reel or something that you would see at a convention. Maybe, or like a promo reel. to, I guess, kind of build buzz, but I don't think it might work. But like you say, there's too many problems with, I guess, the derivative nature of it. That, would we want a series of this? I'm not sure that we would. The fight scene at the beginning, which is they return to at the end, I thought was really great, very slickly shot, really nicely put together. But then you move to, as you say, the other scenes are of considerably variable quality. There's some really bad sound mix stuff going on in there on a couple of the scenes, and that sort of dragged it down. So, and because it's a collection of scenes in no particular order really, you're just getting a glimpse of the project rather than actually you can't even enjoy it in sort of that proof of concept short style, in which you've got a beginning, middle, and an end, or even just a sort of single fight scene or something. So it's not something I can particularly recommend unless you're if you're interested in martial arts movies and what Ben Ramsay's up to and stuff, then it's definitely worth a look. But for anyone else, I'd say it's really probably not of interest. There's the thing about the advert that you say that sort of sets it up, which is funny because that's again another really common sci-fi movie convention that we've seen in a lot of stuff. And even when I watched the Child's Play remake, they've included it there at the very start of the movie, and it's been various other places. That's really nice. Umbrella Corporation for the Resident Evil films and all sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
They've done a website for the series, which is trying to promote the interface, the Total Recall style, product offering that it's all about. So that's really interesting because they've gone to like quite a degree on the website. You actually have to go quite far into the site to actually find any information about the film, which I guess goes both ways.
That's quite a 90s, a 2000s thing as well, isn't it? The whole
Blair Witch Project,
Blair Witch and Cloverfield and Lost and things like that. It's sort of going back to those things where you had these sort of different websites set up to play around with things.
Yeah. I'd say there's some interesting stuff in here. I'm not particularly interested in a series. I would be interested in seeing a complete short. If that was like 30, 45 minutes, I'd be quite happy to give that a go. But it's not something I'm going to want to commit myself to as a web series or something.
There's a TV series from a couple of years ago called Almost Human, which had Carl Urban in it, and that covered a lot of similar ground. So some of the concepts on display here, are quite similar to the sort of things that show was working with. It was a pretty decent show. It only lasted one series, but it's if you can find it, it's worth a look. But anyway, so a bit of a disappointment, unfortunately, this one.
But worth a look, nonetheless.
But it's worth a look because it is Ben Ramsay. So
if you're interested in that sort of thing.
and he did a very stellar job on Blood and Bone for sure. So it's definitely worth a look just for that, really. Our DTV throwback this week is Breeders, aka Deadly Instinct. When a meteor crash lands on the campus of a Boston university, an alien creature manages to escape together with a humanoid woman into the catacombs below. And when people start to go missing in mysterious ways, obviously the police start to suspect the guy shouting, "You've got to believe me! There's an alien down there and he's after our women, damn it!" So, this isn't to be confused with another film called Breeders from 1986. This one came out in 1997 and is currently available on Amazon Prime under the title Deadly Instinct. I found this to be excruciatingly bad, I have to say. I couldn't believe at one point that I was only halfway through watching it. It was so dull, unfortunately. I wish it was the 1986 version. Now, which we covered a film a few episodes back called Project Metal Beast, which is everything I wish this film was. This film just doesn't have any of the wit or the charm of that film. It's so dark and dingy all the way through. It's got stupid characters. I didn't get on with this one very much at all. How about you?
Yeah, I think you're right. This was one I'd seen before, so this was a recommendation on my part. But I wasn't necessarily expecting you to like it. The main reason the main reason I wanted to recommend it was, how many times have you seen the Isle of Man doubling for Boston?
I know. That was so strange, seeing the Isle of Man Film Board come up as one of the producers or something at the beginning. It's like
the Film Commission, yeah.
Very strange, yeah.
So this is a British movie, a British low-budget monster movie, pretending to be an American low-budget monster movie. And for that, I actually thought it did it quite well. The lead is an American actor, Todd Jensen, who's done loads of stuff with like New Image, and his co-star for the marquee value, a bit of marquee value at the time, was Samantha Janus, who later became Samantha Womack, and I thought her American accent was really decent in it. But for me, the big selling point of the film is the monster itself. I think the man in suit monster just looked great. He deserved a better movie, really. And the film is just sluggish. And then the ending is just all over the place, because it suddenly completely changes. So you've got the initial crash landing, the monster starts running around, this lecturer and his student, who he very quickly develops a relationship with. They see that something's up. They then get arrested, and they leave the movie for about 20 minutes. While the police team goes down, and it all turns into aliens,
Marines,
or Predator, or whatever it is they're trying to do in that bit, and they get picked off, and that obviously. And then at the end, this whole kind of zombie thing happens with all the girls at the college, because they're wearing these crystals around their neck which control them, do a mind control thing, and then they get covered in this kind of goo, and they turn feral and start trying to kill people.
Extraordinary.
Well, this is the funny bit, because Samantha Janus's character also ends up with this crystal around her neck. They never explain where the crystal comes from or how they end up around each of these.
Well, it came off like the meteorite when it crashed. They're like picking up the pieces at the beginning.
Someone just knocked them,
making it into necklaces, all of them.
I don't know how. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how they got them around their necks.
Anyway, so Samantha Janus's character ends up sort of covered in slime, and as Richard said, is turning into feral because of this thing, and sort of the hero Ashley manages to rip off the crystal, and she turns back to normal, right? So anyway, they go down into the catacombs and get attacked by these other female college students wearing these crystals around their neck, and they start blasting them to bits with shotguns. And at no point they thought, maybe we just need to take the necklaces off.
Yeah.
They're like, no, it's too late. They can't be saved.
They can't be saved. Yeah. It was a very sort of Millhouse moment, because she does realise, she goes, wait, it's just the crystals around the neck that's turning everything into this. And then the other guy's going, yeah, but it's too late. It's too late. You're living in the past. Let's crack it up.
Samantha Janus starts handling this shotgun like Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2.
Yeah. So that was quite amusing. But
it's got this 1950s kind of feel to it, which I quite liked. That whole square-jawed white male hero and the and investigating the alien that's like the old style, the thing from another worldish kind of era of movies. I think it felt like it was kind of throwing back to that, but with a really gratuitous TNA kind of approach. Well, not massively, but there is
there's an obligatory shower scene and things like that going on.
But lots of leg and bottom shots. It's like really, it is that kind of thing. But Yeah, I just think it's a novel. It's quite novel.
I mean, now you mentioned the fact that it was a British production, it does sort of, explain a few things like the sort of sets and, the things like that. There's one character I did feel really sorry for, and that was there's one female SWAT team member called Styles, and she unfortunately gets shot by one of her own guys who panics, and then she gets crushed by something later on. It's like, oh, for God's sake, dickhead. But, so it was quite sad. Now this cast also it features a guy called Oliver Tobias. Oliver
Tobias. Yeah, I really liked him.
Who did he play in the film? Because
I think he was the cop in the black hat.
He was the cop. That's what I thought. Because so Oliver Tobias. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Arthur and the Britons, sort of back in the 70s. So it was a really good sort of like precursor for things like Robin Sherwood and stuff like that, which he also guest starred in, and Dick Turpin with Richard O'Sullivan. So he's one of these actors who's kept going ever since. So it was good to sort of see his name pop up in a sort of prominent way in this one. We don't score the DTV throwbacks, which is probably just as well in this case. There are better films on there, but if you like this sort of thing, it's worth a look. There are some interesting moments. The alien itself, Rich says he liked it. I thought it looked too much like a xenomorph on steroids, and how it managed to hide in the catacombs, and jump out at people. I have no idea. Basically.
You're overthinking it, Mike.
You know what? I forgot to leave my brain at the door. That's what it is. I'm really.
I wanted to say, going back to the casting. You've mentioned in passing, but there's this young woman who accompanies the alien monster, and her character just sort of. She's played by
changes, doesn't it?
Exactly, she does. 1 minute she's like really gentle, and then which I guess is supposed to be the mind control of the monster. And she kind of says that she's a human, that she was, they allude to like she was abducted or something. She's played by a model and actress at the time called Kadamba Simmons. She unfortunately died about a year after this film was made. Murdered by her boyfriend, unfortunately. Yeah, right. So this was kind of one of her very few roles that she had, which was pretty sad. The film actually doesn't give her that much to do apart from run around in a sort of tight, spangly, 1970s-ish kind of sci-fi character outfit.
Yeah, there was one funny thing with her character, and because Ashley, the hero. By Todd Jensen, he keeps spotting her and running after her, much to sort of Samantha Jensen's sorry, what do I call her?
Janus.
Yeah, chagrin. And towards the end, she's like openly hostile to both of them. Like, for God's sake, we'll just go ahead and screw her then, for God's sake. And at the end, she's sort of left there, sort of going, well, what do I do now? I'm all alone. And Ashley's like, don't worry, we'll look after you. And the daggers coming out of Samantha Janus's eyes. Just for a second, because she turns, because then Ashley turns around and goes, right, honey? And she's like, yes, of course we will look after you. But just for a second, she's like, you bastard. It's just really funny.
Passing thought before we move on, the film is, as you're saying, it's on Amazon Prime. Yeah. There's also a Riff Tracks episode, cool. In which the guys rip into this film, I presume. So that could be quite interesting to check out as well. That's not on that. I think that you have to pay per view that one.
Yeah.
But,
So some of their stuff's on Amazon, but yeah, there are a few that they have to pay for.
Oh, another thing, the director was a guy called Paul Matthews, who would go on to make various sci-fi and fantasy movies, including a film called, I can't remember exactly what it was, Merlin the Return, I think, which had Rick Mayall as Merlin.
Yeah, that is a Riff Tracks one as well.
They've done one, yeah.
So I've done that one, yeah.
But the first film, this was Paul Matthews' second film. The first film he made was kind of the trial run for this. So it's another monster movie in England or whatever, pretending to be America. The only thing is, it does it really badly. Worse, basically, because you know how British houses have got very particular kind of architecture.
Yeah.
So there's a scene. It's like it goes into like a cul-de-sac or something in a very British road, and it's supposed to be the suburbs of America. It's like not remotely convincing. So that's called Grimm. That one. That's Grimm. Yeah. 1995, I think that was made.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, not everyone's a winner. Sometimes they're just interesting because they're just odd.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to see, a film pretending to be American, go watch Death Wish 3. But otherwise,
I watched that recently, actually, because a lot of that was shot in London, wasn't it?
In Docklands, yeah, that and Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, that was nuts. That was like the assault on Saigon.
Yeah. Stanley Kubrick hates flying, so he refused to fly anywhere. So he said, "No, I'll just shoot it in Docklands." Obviously he couldn't do it there now, because Docklands is quite thriving these days. But back in the day, it was just a wasteland.
It was nuts. That whole sniper sequence was there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, that is the end of our show. So thank you to my my co-reviewers this week. So that's Will.
Yep.
Yeah, he's there somewhere. Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
And Rich, of course. Yeah, nothing but professionalism here. Thank you for listening, and tune in again next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.